Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Stanley Safaris Podcast. Join me today as I chat to Chris Roche, one of the founders of Wild Expeditions, and learn how tourism is helping fund conservation across Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Madagascar. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Stanley Safaris Podcast, where we chat to the founders and owners of the camps and lodges that we love to send our guests to. And today I'm honored to be joined by Chris Roche, the founder of Wild Expeditions. They have camps in Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Madagascar, and Ethiopia. Although we don't sell Ethiopia, they do have properties and services up there. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you're busy. You just come back from Botswana. So, I appreciate your time.
No, not at all, Sean. Thank you. I appreciate the support and always happy to chat about things safari.
Perfect. Great. Well, we could be here all morning then. I'm the same.
Yeah, I'll be disciplined.
No problem. Chris, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got into the safari industry, and inevitably how we ended up with Wild Expeditions.
Yeah, I guess I, like a lot of South African kids, you grow up going to the bush. For me, the thing I wanted to be was a tracker. So I don't know if you remember John Varty did this thing on Alton and Tlongo in the 80s. And I really wanted to be a tracker like Elman. So what did I do? I just did the sensible things. I finished school. I went to university. I did some, career-aligned activities like DJing and cutting hair. And eventually so I did a BA, and for my honors, I looked at the evolution of conservation consciousness in the white middle class in Knysna as it related to elephants.
Oh.
That kind of got me excited about what was happening then in South Africa. That was 96, I think, 95. And it was, there was an emerging, obviously, black middle class in the country. And I thought that this would lead into, and I'm sure you never thought the conversation was going to go this way, but I thought that was an interesting time for South Africa in the sense of how our conservation consciousness would change. So I'd always been a birder and a tracker. I mean, I was tracking, I guess, I don't know, 10, 12, that kind of age, and obviously birding. And
sorry, Chris, where did you grow up that gave you the ability to go and track and spend time out in the bush? I mean, I grew up in Durban, and we had Umfolozi, Shishlui, and the Drakensberg and St. Lucia and things like that. Where was your playground?
You don't need a lot. I mean, even the outskirts of Joburg. I grew up in Joburg, so outskirts of Joburg for sure. I had parents who had a farm in the Soutpansberg, so I spent time there. And then later on in the Steenkampsberg towards Machadodorp, Belfast, Delstrom area.
Okay.
So trekking Arabian grassland or looking for blue crane nests, that sort of thing.
Sure.
How did we get there? I can't remember now. Oh, yes. So anyway, I did this honors degree. I ended up working at the World of Birds in Hart Bay. I was at UCT for university, and saw an ad in the Getaway for CC Africa at the time as a guide. Yep. I thought, okay, great. Let me combine these things. I'll go and learn to become a better tracker. It'll give me an opportunity to kind of understand where South African conservation consciousness is going. And I'll get to live in the bush. It'll be good for me to have to host people because I'm a complete introvert. So, so I wasn't tailor-made for the role, but anyway, that's how I started. So worked for and beyond in the Lowveld, had Ngada, head guide, then moved into a training role across the group there, then edited what they called the Eco Journal and the e-zine at the time, what's called a blog now.
Yep.
Sort of oversaw the research projects that were taking place, done by staff and also external academics across mostly Southern Africa. Duncan Butchart, I worked with at the time, was looking after East Africa, the late Duncan Butchart. And from there, I guess I kind of abandoned the idea of an academic pursuit in a changed kind of South African paradigm. And I loved walking, I loved tracking, and I just kind of pursued that. Then we had 9/11. So then I was kind of running with, what did they call it, out of the green team, the sort of sustainability thing was emerging more in tourism at that time.
Is this still with and
And
beyond
beyond,
CC
yeah,
Africa? Okay,
yeah.
so and there was an internal position going around and looking at
Yeah,
the
evaluating camps, at the time, just getting away from to have a towel policy as opposed
mm,
to washing a towel every day. I mean, how anathema is that in the modern world?
mm,
Like crazy, and I remember arguing with, I won't mention names, but some senior people at and beyond at the time, like, what is this? Why
mm,
would we not? And
yeah,
it was about, this is luxury. And so it was really, I suppose at the time, sort of the cutting edge. And I'm not saying we were the cutting edge, but the
mm,
cutting edge at that time of how tourism was really becoming a better defined ecotourism, and I guess that's where I kind of got ingrained in the philosophy that tourism. Obviously, we all come from that space, but
yeah,
a kind of I don't know how would you'd call it, manifesto of tourism must make a difference.
yeah,
Otherwise, what's the point? I didn't get into tourism to make people feel happy on
mm,
vacation. That's a bonus,
yeah,
but it's a means to an end. I know that doesn't sound like a very good sales pitch, but it's from our perspective, tourism is really about making a difference. So 9/11 happened. I resigned, but they kept me on retainer. I went back to UCT, did a master's on the Springbok treks and the Karoo.
mm,
And after that, then approached Wilderness and joined Wilderness Safaris, um, who at the time I thought were doing the most interesting things in an ecotourism sense in the safari space.
yeah,
So that was, I think, 2005. And I got really excited about the things that they were doing. You know, a company that had a core in Botswana, but which was also doing interesting things at Pafuri or Ndumu or Rocktail in South Africa,
mm,
Serikafema, the Skeleton Coast, Palmvig in Namibia, Malawi,
yeah,
Nyika Plateau. I mean, now we're talking about things that go beyond just the pure savannah
yeah,
that's accessible from a town like Cape Town.
mm, mm,
So this curse of the big five, they were way away from that, and
yeah,
that was for me was really interesting and very formative. And I worked with some really interesting people there. Some of you've interviewed recently on podcasts, and learned a lot more about I guess I came as a bit of a purist, I guess, in terms of ecology and what
yeah,
have you, and I learned quite a lot more about how to fit that into a commercial model. Um, so with them, I was involved again in the sustainability space, researching the Wilderness Trust, never mind the environmental management systems in the cabs,
mm,
SAPNIA, how to treat wastewater and so on, and then moved into marketing. So I got into marketing as a way of, again, not something I ever thought that I would do. But I kind of I'd moved to Joburg at that point to get married. That didn't last very long, but I ended up staying in Joburg,
mm,
and yeah, and I needed to understand the commercial aspects of the business better. So I moved into marketing, and then last kind of roles at Wilderness, I was there 15 years, were
no,
in developing new businesses. So the first, I was when we moved into Odzala, that was partly my
mm-hmm,
project. Um, what are the other ones? Rwanda was partly my project. And then
wow,
before I left, we were looking at trying to move into Ethiopia and Madagascar. The whole point being that you can take a core um, that is commercially viable, and you can
mm,
use it to subsidize things that are not necessarily commercially viable. So like
yeah,
any national parks agency in any country. So let's say Yellowstone funds whatever, or the Everglades
yeah,
funds whatever. And so for us at Wilderness, it was Mambo funds the Congo.
yeah, mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
and eventually, ironically enough, Rwanda ended up funding other more
yeah,
mainstream parts of the business. But
mm,
yeah, really, that's kind of, I guess, where my main philosophy comes from, which is, Africa is not just savanna. Let's say there are 13 biomes. There's 120 odd ecoregions as defined by WWF, and each of those has its associated kind of fauna and flora,
yeah,
including endemics in each of those things. So if we think that we are conserving Africa and biodiversity by just operating inside the savannah, we're
mm-hmm,
cooked. There's no reality to that. It's a small portion of Africa's diversity. So end of 2019, when tourism was really going well and people seemed to be into this idea that you could, and fresh off the success of Rwanda, we thought we'd go out and start a new company that went and did these interesting things. So resigned end of 2019, finished Nitus end of March 2020. So that was not a good start, although it was a better start than if that had happened 6 months later.
Yeah.
So and our idea there was to say, okay, we can go into destinations that the big brands in the safari space won't go into. We can do it in an owner-run way that is less capital intensive than a luxury brand. So, for example, if you take any luxury brand you care to mention here in the sort of $3,000+ per night bracket, you just can't develop in an emerging destination, because to keep your brand high, you've got to invest, let's say $5 million to start.
Yeah.
To get that $5 million back, you've got to charge this rate. The rate in that country is currently like whatever, it's $100 and you need 2,000, and you just can't do it. So you needed a different model. So that's what we were trying to do. We wanted to start a different model that went and looked at Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, places like this. And of course, COVID gave us a proper blood nose. And gave us a bit more commercial reality, as if I should have paid more attention, I guess, earlier in my career. We nonetheless went and did a deal in Madagascar. We did a deal in Ethiopia. And then we decided, okay, look, let's be realistic. We need something to subsidize those.
So those were your two first business partners, effectively.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I think the world, what we thought with COVID was that people would get a few things, the most important being, a zoonotic, like a disease that comes from wildlife that then ends up transferring to humans. It results because of our encroachment on natural ecosystems, especially rainforests. So we thought, okay, off the back of this, how's this for naive? We thought people would say, oh, well, yeah, I know, geez, so we definitely should support the Odds-Islanders or the whatever. And in reality, what happened post-COVID was only the mainstream recovered quickly. So we realized we needed to come into more established markets, and we then moved into Zimbabwe, bought Kapwangi. And then the year after that, we're lucky with getting an opportunity in Botswana. So that wasn't our initial idea to go into those countries, because, and this is really, I suppose it gets at the heart, and I'm talking a lot here, so interrupt me.
No, carry on. This is great.
Okay. So, we hadn't envisaged going into Botswana. There are a lot of operators in Botswana.
Yeah.
There's no shortage. It's a difficult place to get a competitive niche. Same with Zim to an extent. And so we were driven to change our view, because we needed something more established to subsidize the less established. But we did say that we wouldn't do anything unless we could actually make a difference.
Yeah.
So we didn't want to come in and just create a camp for the sake of creating a camp. So we looked a long time in Botswana. Probably 3 years before we got that opportunity. And
sure.
the one we did take on is in a community concession that's multi-use, that had been cattle grazed and poached and hunted for 40 years. And it wasn't the most obvious place to go, but it was an exciting place for us because there was no one else there. It's miles from Mount, it takes us 12 hours to drive the fuel there, as opposed to a camp in the Southern Delta that you can reach in 2 hours. So the cost of the fuel is incrementally higher and so on. So it's not like, I suppose off the back of Madagascar and Ethiopia, we weren't going to do it the easy way. So, but the point about going where we went is that, if you look at any of the elephant research projects that look at how elephants disperse out of Botswana. So, maybe for a bit of context, let's say there are 500,000 savanna elephants in Africa. Let's say 300,000 of them are in Xhosa, Greater Xhosa, Kalanga, Zambezi, so across Bots, Namibia, Zambia, and Angola, all clustered around the Delta. Let's say the Delta is the center point. Those elephants cross so there's a whole heap of veterinary fences that separate out different blocks of Botswana from cattle. So to separate buffalo from cattle, and elephants are constrained by moving because the calves can't cross those. So even though a bull can step over a fence and move, the cows never disperse. So you have a country like Angola, which has got, I don't know, 7 odd million hectares in southeastern Angola that could be used much more effectively for conservation. But the recolonization of that area by elephants is slow because you've got a complete bottleneck. Same for lions. So Panthera did a survey in Lengueliana, for example. I don't know, this must be, actually, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years ago. And in that whole 7 million hectares, I think they counted 25 lions. That was their estimate. So where we are in the north of the Delta really sits along a veterinary fence. And I think what we would like to see there, and this is ambitious and it'll take a long time, but the fence is not in good repair, but is an understanding that if we want to reduce the elephant numbers in Botswana, for example, that you could release a safety valve that enabled far more effective dispersal into Angola or Zambia and so on. And the same would happen, obviously, with other species. Different drivers, of course, and different circumstances required. But you can't operate tourism without a product, without the thing that people will buy. Like I can have a restaurant and serve you, I don't know, giant landsnails from Ivory Coast imported fresh every Friday, but no one's buying them. I mean, in South Africa, I'm talking.
Yeah.
Ivory Coast, they're buying them. In South Africa, they're not buying them. And so what? I can't keep people employed. I can't pay my rent. And in essence, I can't then reinvigorate the corner shop of the dying high street or whatever as an analogy for conservation. So, that's kind of what we're trying to do in Botswana, and I think that's partly what you wanted to talk about, which was what's the point of each of the camps that we have. I'll start with Madagascar because it's the simplest one in a sense, and most different to other things in the industry. Madagascar, by some measures, has lost 90% of its natural vegetation over, in essence, since people colonized it. So it's a subjective measure. But even since the 50s, it's lost a huge amount of natural vegetation, some more than others. So spiny forest or dry deciduous forest. Rainforest is one of those things. And then rainforest, you can split into different altitudinal kind of realms. So Maswala, where we are in Madagascar, is coastal rainforest. And of course, that's where people settle. So it's probably the most threatened piece of type of rainforest in Madagascar. And the point about operating there is, as was the same reason for so much of the savannah over the last 40 years, is if you can't show that it has a value beyond just an unsustainable service, being the removal of meat or timber or whatever, then that is just what happens. So and in Madagascar particularly, so there's a bushmeat trade. Forests often grow on swampy ground. The swampy ground is perfect for growing rice. Deforest the trees, you can grow the rice, and you generate these sorts of things. So our partner, Pierre Bester, who we partnered with, had been going there since the late 90s. And he developed quite an innovative, very common sense approach to this, which is, how much rice do you generate off this deforestation per year? Okay, I'll pay you twice the amount of rice, regardless of cost or whatever. But you generate 1 bag of rice, I'll pay you 2 bags of rice, just not to deforest. And, and so that kind of grew. And over COVID, we expanded that reserve. I mean, this is tiny by mainland Africa standards, but we expanded that reserve from about 15 hectares to about 85 hectares of coastal forest, of which I guess around there's maybe, I should have calculated this, but I don't think there's more than 1,000 hectares undisturbed. So the private sector is contributing 10%, So if my maths is right, 8%. So what do you need in order to be able to do that? You need a product, as I said earlier. You need a place that people want to go to, and you need, beyond that, to take the money that you generate from that, just apart from staying in business and giving your shareholders a return. You need the ability to take some of that money and enhance the conservation of that ecosystem in which you're operating. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
driver there is lowland rainforest conservation, and it takes lots of forms, obviously. So there's engagement with the local community. It's alternative sources of protein. It's education. It's employment. It's procurement of whether it's eggs or
Yeah. Yeah.
vanilla or whatever. So all of these, let's call them conservation economy elements. And of course, for any economy, you need a market. These
Mm.
things can exist in isolation. You can't sell them because you
Yeah.
can't export them to market to bring the tourism there, and that changes a whole lot of it. So that's kind of our driver there. And, not to put too fine a point on it, I mean, the endemism just on that peninsula is crazy. So
Yeah.
endemism within an endemic subcontinent, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, and I do have the numbers, but not off the top of my head, but, that
No,
85 hectares has probably got 100 bird species in it, you
sure.
know. Uh,
Sure.
lemur species, at least 10, and then mammals beyond that again. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
and of those 10 lemur species, I think there are 4 that don't occur anywhere except on that peninsula.
Yeah.
So it's, it's a big deal for us anyway.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I've been to Mswala, and
oh,
it's beautiful. It's yeah, it's one of my best camps. I mean, the remoteness of it, you guys are the only ones out there really doing anything. To get there is a challenge, but when you're there, it's absolute paradise. Actually, getting there is half the journey, a nice boat trip across the bay.
yeah,
And yeah, the forest there is stunning. You've got these beautiful forests coming down onto golden beaches and the volcanic rock around, and nobody else there, and the most amazing lemurs. We saw the red ruffed lemur there, which is the main draw. But in terms of the remoteness, obviously you've got Moronsetra, which is your closest, biggest town,
yeah.
and then you've got local villages close by, and so you're working with those local villages to produce chickens, eggs, and that to then use in the camp.
Yes, especially fish, obviously, get
Yeah.
in the ocean, but other, yeah, eggs in particular, right, and chickens, but more that those chickens go to staff rations, but the
Yeah.
eggs to the guests. That's the other thing. When you're operating tourism and you're charging people whatever it is, $600 per person per night to $5,000 per person per
Yeah.
night, like you got to serve them a decent piece of meat that
Of
was
course.
appropriately and hygienically slaughtered.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Of course.
yeah,
Of
but
course.
you're
Those.
so
Yeah.
right. I mean, the logistics are the real challenge there, and in essence, I suppose that's what you pay for is the remoteness of the
Yeah.
experience, and the absolute disconnection from other people. I mean,
Hmm.
we've got Starlink there now. That was a big step for us. Not universally approved internally, but we did
Yeah.
need it to work there. And so then I
Yeah.
guess these days people, it's a human right to
Needed.
be
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so
And
yeah,
I mean,
there.
Madagascar, I absolutely love Madagascar, the diversity. But I've done a bit of time on I'm going to call it mainland before going up to the peninsula because you are quite isolated up there. But just driving through parts of the country and you can see that deforestation you were talking about earlier. You have these very small pockets of natural forest where you get a clump of lemurs that exist in that little pocket, and then you have to go somewhere else and you're driving through fairly deforested landscape to get to another pocket of forest where you have those species of lemurs up there. And then you get up to somewhere like Maswalo, and maybe because it is a bit more remote, it felt that forest there was much more intact compared to what I'd seen in other parts of the island. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I mean, for rainforest anyway, that is no, in fact, for all biomes and ecosystems in Madagascar, that's the biggest network of protected areas
Hmm.
that with untouched. I wouldn't call it pristine, but I wouldn't call it untouched either. In parts it is, but natural vegetation on the island. So, obviously that was part of the draw.
Yeah.
For us to go there, it's an exceptional destination. You
Yeah.
really do feel like disconnected and reconnected in a way to both to nature, but also to the people you're traveling with. So yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
we don't do luxury per se. I mean, we're the luxury of 20 years ago,
Yeah.
when a tent with hot water was a luxury. Not that okay, we're a bit more luxurious than that,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
but we're certainly not focused on, spending a lot of capital on building. infrastructure to make people more comfortable. I think, and I'm sure you've had many people say this in your podcast, but almost the more that you add to those layers of luxury, the more boundaries you put between you and what we want people to experience.
Yeah.
So, I hope that we never ever build anything that isn't canvas and gauze, so that you must hear the frogs, you must hear the scopsal, you would hear
Absolutely.
the scopsal, whether it's a lion or whatever it is. Otherwise, you just, I find you so disconnected and
absolutely.
But it's obviously not for everyone, and I suppose that's the point about our industry, is it's matured enough to the point now where you've got strata that satisfy just about anyone's level of desire for luxury.
Yeah, and we finding more and more people wanting that authentic, the tented camp. They want to go back to those, like you said, the olden day luxury. That's what that was, and people want to go back to that, and then they can go and combine that with a nice luxury camp afterwards. But we are finding more and more people looking at this combination. I call it adventure luxury, because you got that adventure aspect, and then you can go and have your nice bells and whistles and butlers and everything else if you want that, if you desire that. But we are finding a lot of people kind of looking at that combination. And then for me, luxury is I find it a difficult term, because luxury for me is completely different to what luxury could be for you or what anybody else. I grew up camping, and maybe you were the same. I grew up camping with my parents and having a little tent and going to communal bathrooms and things like that. And so a 3-star for me was back then was a luxury property, because we got to sleep in a bed and we had ensuite bathroom and things like that. So it's a difficult term, but I think nowadays the way the world is going, and we're seeing it every day on social media with vehicles queuing up on sightings and things like that, and particularly in Africa. And so luxury in Maswala's sense is the remoteness, is that disconnect, and having this pristine wilderness, this amazing wilderness to yourself effectively, and having the ability to explore that without having to share it with a whole bunch of other people. For me, that's a luxury. The accommodation, that's a bed to sleep on. You've got nice food. You're being well looked after. You're comfortable. You go and explore the luxury of having this pristine wilderness to yourself. The
luxury of space and time and flexibility. And for me, like the luxury of an intact ecosystem that's functioning as it should do. And just to go to your point about luxury, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. Luxury is not so much about utility, it's about emotion. And it's also about rarity. So, like the less there is of something, the more luxurious it is, the more indulgent it is to experience it, especially on your own. So, whether you're going to Venice and you want a gondola without others. I've never been to Venice, but I assume, that's the luxury. If you can do Venice in a luxury way, that'll be the way.
Yeah.
Look, it's good. I love what you said about the adventure. What did you call it? Adventure luxury.
Adventure luxury. Yeah.
Like mixing those two things, I think is a great idea. And obviously, even within a couple or a family, there are different definitions of what these things are. So
absolutely. Perfect. So Maswala in Madagascar, and Madagascar has its problems. It's not a typical African safari, I do often find it a bit of a tricky sell. We rather require people coming to us asking for it. But what makes Madagascar so special?
It's got a complete...
This is an easy one, though.
It's got a... Well, I'm going to answer it from a variety of ways, but I mean, first up, I think it's got a monopoly on lemurs, so you can't go anywhere. I mean, there's some introduced lemurs in the Comores, but it's a different thing altogether. You might as well go to the Duke Lemur Center in South or North Carolina, wherever it is. So it's got a monopoly on those things. You just can't see them anywhere else. And you can add to that a whole heap of stuff like cool beaches, amazing, interesting culture that doesn't occur anywhere else. That's a mix of Africa and sort of Southeast Asia. For me, what makes it special is that people rave about the Galapagos, for example, and if you're seeing evolution or what have you. The Galapagos is amazing, and it is, but and although as much as I enjoyed seeing a finch with a diameter of bill, conical or not, from one island to the next, the average person is just seeing Darwin's finches, and they're
Yeah.
not. It's not. It's it's not really elucidating evolution that clearly for the majority of people. I think Madagascar does that, and then I think like if you take something like the Sophocles, I don't know how many Sophocles species are. I don't know. Let's call it 10 for argument's
Yeah.
sake. But you can see exactly that they
So
came from.
just for the sake of the podcast, what is a safaka? Just go explain
So
that so that people understand what that is.
So yeah, so Sifaka would be one of the is it the one of the biggest diurnal lemurs, and people know them as the dancing lemur. So they're
Yeah.
bipedal sometimes when they move between patches of forest, like across the road. So they'll kind of dance
Yeah.
across, and people love to photograph that. They mostly are white, and so they stand out quite a lot with. But what's interesting about this is that you can see how the original species must have looked and how they evolved into these other 9 species. So they've got different features around a facial mask or
Mm.
a mantle or whatever it is. And you can see how these species, which were at one stage subspecies, which were at one stage just variations of the species, are separated from each other by rivers that are uncrossable now, but
Mm.
which probably didn't exist when it existed as a single species. So they get cut off and evolve
Yeah.
and so on. So I mean, I really enjoy that. The 120 lemur species or so. There's 20 mouse lemur species. So you can literally, like it's almost radial. You can
Mm.
divide the island into these different things, and you'll find a different mouse lemur species in each of those.
Mm.
So if you look at cichlids in Lake Malawi, and
Yeah.
or in fact, fish on either side of the Congo River
Hmm.
were the same species when the thrust of that river was not so strong, and they could cross and
Hmm.
procreate. Now the thrust of that river is so strong that they can't move from one bank to the other. So you've got what was the same species on this side becoming a different species from the one on this side. You know, so and I think that's hard. That's hard to visualize
Yeah.
or tactilely experience as a visitor to Brazil.
Mm.
But and the same in Lake Malawi, where the lake levels have changed so much over the ice age and so on that these species have become separated. In
Mm.
Madagascar, I think these things are so much more in your face,
Yeah.
and with a good guide, it can really reveal the magic of adaptive radiation.
Mm.
And look, that might sound a little bit academic, maybe you just want to go to the beach and see a cute lemur with big eyes. That's
Yeah.
also cool. Yeah, but knowing how those lemurs came to be there from a single individual species, like of let's say Prosimian galago that
Mm.
comes off the Rufiji, ends up on a raft onto Madagascar. There's no primates there since it split from Africa. Primates evolved afterwards, and this Prosimian just evolves into 120 different species.
Jeez.
Same with the Vangas. I mean, if you take the Vangas,
Yeah.
the bird family in
Good. Yeah.
Madagascar, a bit like Darwin's finches. So you've got one with a bill like a hornbill,
Mm.
one with a bill like a woodhooper, one with a bill like a nuthatch or a woodpecker. And so they have evolved as from their original thing, which was probably some sort of shrike.
Yeah.
It become a woodpecker, or tenrecs, become hedgehogs, shrews, otters. I love it. I think.
Mm.
And look, apart from that, I mean, just maybe on a less kind of philosophical bent,
Mm.
it's just an incredible island. The marketing slogan for the National Tourism Agency is Treasure Island,
Yeah.
and that it plays on their pirate history, but it also plays on this idea that you're discovering this tropical thing, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful beaches, great marine life, whales, dolphins, turtles, whale sharks, reefs, and then on
Yeah.
land the same thing. So you literally, you're discovering this whole thing. And it's
Best of both worlds. Yeah.
yeah,
It's
it's a
something for
gem.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complete gem. I think it's the kind of place everyone should go once in their life.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. No, great. So after Maswala, you
Mm,
and Ethiopia. So you did the two effectively at
yeah,
the same time, and then into Camp Wangi,
yeah.
and just had a nice big family at Camp Wangi, and they absolutely loved it. Um, so
Did you see the photo of them? Anyway, I'll WhatsApp it to you all together in front of the main area. It's quite a Yeah, it's quite
I
a team photo.
No,
Yeah,
I've seen, they've sent me a few photos. I think they got stuck in the mud, which they loved. They loved the adventure aspect of that. So yeah, had an absolutely amazing time. But Camp Wangi, same with Maswala Forest Lodge, was an existing lodge there, and you came
yeah.
in. Why Zimbabwe? What drew you to Zimbabwe?
It's got a. I mean, as a ex-guide, Zim has just got such a good standard of guiding and
Mm,
such a dedicated vision of pursuing that standard.
yeah.
So the quality of the guiding, I think the quality of the wildlife, I think it's an
Mm,
underappreciated
mm,
destination. Obviously, it has political challenges, and it's interesting how these things happen. So in the 90s, Zim was getting more visitors than Botswana.
yeah.
Zim then goes through its challenges, and Zambia next door, Livingstone, which was unvisited in
Hmm.
comparison to Vic Falls, it switches over. And you get, I mean, this is what's interesting about marketing and branding and what have you, is that you get these artifacts of popular opinion or
Hmm.
consciousness or whatever
Yeah.
that just defines where people travel.
Yeah.
And I don't know, even at Wilderness, I used to love Zimbabwe because it wasn't the most fashionable destination compared to the other
Mm,
countries within the portfolio. But at the same time, just incredible people, incredible guides,
yeah.
incredible wildlife, and a fidelity to the authenticity of safari.
Yeah.
And whether that's in Mana or Wangi or Gonarajo or the Sabi Valley or wherever,
Mm,
there's something about them that is stubbornly authentic.
yeah.
And so
Agreed.
it suited us as a personality. We partnered with a guy called Dave Carson who had started
Hmm.
that camp. Dave, I'd known for a long time, excellent guide. He's the chief examiner for the uh, Zimbabwe Professional Guides and Hunters Association. And so we had a very similar philosophy, I think, about that stubborn authenticity and about the dedication to guiding and an emphasis on walking.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
got a.
it's been
Mm, mm,
fantastic. I've really enjoyed being back in Zimbabwe on a regular basis. And it's a cliche, but the people really are fantastic
yeah.
and so dedicated to hospitality. And
It's got a.
yeah,
It's
so
got a.
warm and welcoming.
Yeah.
And the bush is great. I've been loving it. The concession there, obviously, when you look at these sorts of things, I mean, you're going into a country and choosing a location or a camp or what have you. And there's lots of factors, but at its core, you've got to have a good piece of raw material. Concession's got to be good. So and I love Camp Wangi for its
Mm,
diversity. So it kind of sits between the granites and basalts to the north and the sand to the south. So you've got this teak woodland and teak scrub to
yeah.
the south, and you've got Mabani and other emergent koppies and hills, rocky outcrops to the north. And then in between those two on the ecotone sits this almost saucer of depression where you get uh, I mean, after the rain, you talked about your guests getting stuck. Now we had some serious rain this summer,
Yeah.
and those flares, people call them flares. You go there and you're like,
Mm,
it's long grass, but I don't know if it's a flare. Flare being a marsh.
yeah.
This year, those flares have been lakes and will become marshes and flares again. So it's
Amazing.
been, oh yeah, no, it's an incredible area and great diversity of wildlife.
Yeah.
And just, from there to our camp in Karangoma, I forget the
Mm,
distance, but you could walk, let's call it 350 kilometers,
yeah.
cross one tar road, not see a fence, and not see another person.
Yeah.
And that tar road is a desolate one between Nata and Kasane,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
so you might not even see a car.
Yeah.
And just being part of Kaza, there's a sense of space,
Mm,
and
mm.
yeah, yeah, I love it. Yeah, yeah, it's been great.
So let's talk the conservation and community initiatives that is key to what you guys are doing. It's key for us and our guests knowing that the money they're spending, coming and staying with you, is going into the right places. Um, and you've got individual properties, excuse me,
Yeah.
in different countries. How do you manage the conservation and community initiatives and projects that you're looking at within each of those regions?
Yeah, so purpose is something that got a lot of kind of it became a bit trendy to talk about purpose over the last 15 years, but, Simon Sinek and what have you. But I think purpose is critical to everyone. Like, this is the human condition. We're all looking for a purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, the purpose of ecotourism, the way we do it, is to make a difference to conservation. So just by existence, every camp in our industry pretty much does contribute, either by paying lease fees or conservation levies or entry fees or what have you, whether that's going to the state or to communities or to the private sector. So all of that generates money that just allows ecosystems to continue to exist. And that for me, in space, and I talk about an ecosystem very loosely, but it's like if you look at the data that's coming out of something like vulture home ranges through satellite tagging, you can't protect a vulture in Kruger.
Yeah.
Kruger's 2 million hectares, but it's very linear. So it's an ecosystem, but it's a very managed ecosystem. But the point is, it's at scale. So 2 million hectares is actually relatively small. Wangi's 1.4, 1.6 or something, but it's part of KAZA. So you really need this network of systems ecosystems to exist. And so let's say that that's the foundational kind of underpin of all tourism done this way. It should allow pieces of land to continue to exist. So how do you allow those things to continue to exist? You make them generate money. So, if it pays, it stays, this slogan that draws some controversy. It's ugly. It's Machiavellian, but it's the truth in a modern world. And if you look at governments, for example, they need to employ people. They need a tax base. They need people to be employed, not employed by them, but they need economies and so on. So having pieces of ground sit vacant doesn't suit national economies. The fiscus doesn't benefit. So you have to make those areas benefit the fiscus. So they've got to generate revenue. Okay, that's the first step. The second step is, how do you change people's attitude towards those places? Like, when we have these conversations, often people just want to hear about, but can I dart a rhino?
Yeah.
And for me, it's such a minor part of the big picture. It's like it's important, and it gives people a tactile, hands-on experience, and that's the important part of it. There's participation, and it becomes real.
Yeah.
But actually introducing rhino is a much smaller part of, let's say, the whole system being protected. And second to that system being protected and generating revenue and therefore paying for its protection, and not being an opportunity cost for the state, is people's attitudes towards it, people living adjacent to it or in it.
Yep.
And so, of course, they're living with the costs of wildlife. You have to give them something that balances out those costs. So whether that's money or you take the cost away or whatever it is. And so you can do that through employment, through procurement, and through education, and a whole host of other things. And I'm drawing a very broad picture here before we focus in on the purpose of each camp or the mechanism in each camp.
Yeah.
And then after that, let's say the ecosystem might need restoring, and that's where reintroducing mega herbivores like black rhino or rhino would come into play. And that's very much, it's a bit like the panda for WWF.
Yeah.
You need something around which people's emotions can coalesce.
Of course, yeah.
Like the first 2 points I made, no one's emotion coalesced there. So I died on this podcast. So, all right. So at Madagascar, at Mswala, as I mentioned, obviously it's the ecosystem. So we lease land. So people, customary land, private land, our own land that we own, we lease additional land. And it's now through a financial payment rather than rice, but effectively the same thing.
Yeah.
Then comes employment, then comes the procurement, then comes the education. So all of those things are kind of in play there and should result in the protection of that ecosystem and therefore those endemics. And a functioning ecosystem that continues to have ecosystem services that support the communities there. So the river continues to flow, pollination continues to happen, rain continues to be produced by that microclimate. So then going to Wangi, there we're in and at Mswala similarly, we generate revenue for the national park.
Yeah.
So Mswala National Park, I think, has whatever it is, it sells 3,000 entry tickets a year. I think we buy 2,000 of them.
Yeah.
So so we're a major funder of the park through tourism. And so it goes beyond just our patch of hectares.
Yeah.
If we go to Wangi, we're in the middle of a big national park. We pay a lease fee. Each guest pays an entry fee plus a conservation levy. And then beyond that, we also fund various things, whether it's water provision, whether it's fire breaks, whether it's road repair. And we're talking the public parts of the park as well, not just the parts of the private concession. So there's a contribution in that sense to just the operating of this big protected area.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, I think our main contribution there, this might sound a little abstract, but it really does come down to changing people's perceptions or perspectives on wildlife. And the two ways that we do that, I'm talking now for citizens, not for visitors.
Yeah.
One is through a guide training process that we run. So at any one time, we've got between 4 and 5 learners in camp. Learners, they're apprentice guides, can take anywhere between 5 and 10 years to become a professional guide. Yeah. These guys are, and we run programs basically that take them from inexperience to qualification. And who you focus on, where those people come from, and so on, is really what change. It can have a multiplier effect, let's say. Okay. So economically, but also in terms of perception. And then beyond that, there's a really inspirational guy, Benson Siawara, that used to be a guide for Wilderness Safaris a long time ago, long since been independent. He lives in Vic Falls, but he also has a house in the village outside Vic Falls. And while with cattle and mares and what have you. And while there, he kind of noticed that kids were not going to school. This is 20 k's from Vic Falls, and were experimenting with alcohol, and there was no health services and whatever. Yeah. Anyway, together with his partners in the UK, he now has probably the best rural primary school, the best rural high school, and and I mean, it's just incredibly inspiring.
Wow.
Yeah. What him and his partners have done there is really exceptional. It's called Lesedi, and we try to get all of our guests to visit. It's just it's close to the airport, so it's an easy one to visit. But they are miles from Wangi. So he runs these eco clubs and really interesting vocational training in the school and what have you. So, we try to get the kids that are doing food tech, like what we used to call hub economics.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So they'll when we've got a group, sometimes those kids who, before their exams, they'll come and work in the kitchen for that weekend or whatever. Then they go off and do their exams. But the eco clubs for those schools, we get them to come out and visit the camp each year. And for 3 nights, 4 days, 2 sets of kids, 2 consecutive weekends, let's say. So we close the camp for 10 days to fit this all in. And those kids get to not just experience the bush, but to see it in a way. And none of this is profound. I'm not claiming this to be innovative. Lots of people are doing this. But so much so often, these things so depend on the person running it. And in this case, Benson is just such an inspirational character that it just can't fail to have impact on people. So these kids come out, and Benson comes out and there, and we kind of take them through various curriculums around let's say natural heritage in the country. So national parks, what do they do, blah, blah, blah. How does it fit into the economy of the country? How does it fit into careers? So this is not just about you're going to come and you're going to learn about the hydrogen cycle, right?
Yeah.
And therefore don't pollute water or whatever. This is about, okay, today we're doing a session with the housekeepers. Midday we're doing the workshop. Afternoon we're doing the kitchen. We're all going to prep dinner or whatever. So these kids get to go through each department, and hopefully not all of them, obviously, but these are the kids who are already interested in the environment, who will find ways to make a living from something that might otherwise be a cost. So all of their parents, for example, have got cattle or maize fields that get trashed by elephants and lions every summer in the case of the crops. So wildlife just a cost, change the perspective, and so on. So we knew in Botswana, but again, the focus there is similar in the sense that it's mitigating human wildlife conflict, so that elephants and lions, but also changing perspectives. So we haven't yet started with these kids programs there, but that's the next step. We are working with the school anyway there at the moment for school uniforms, so the basics. The expression, you can't teach a hungry child, right? So sort out nutrition, then education. Not that we're doing nutrition, but just as an analogy. Yeah, and more just touching again on what I said earlier, the veterinary fence, it kind of bottlenecks zebra there. There's a migration of zebra into the area. Hasn't really been understood to even exist.
Mm.
Since we've been there, it's super clear that it exists. But we need to get some collars on them to understand how the fence influences their movement.
Impact.
From
Sure.
the air, you can see these pods that run longitudinally adjacent to the fence, literally Namibia to the Delta, Namibia to the
Yeah,
Delta.
yeah,
And they don't cross the fence again. So they'll never recolonize Angola that way.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and
Do you have
and
historical data on that to see where they went? So
no, no, not in any fine detail like you would get from satellite
yeah,
collars.
sure.
And more than that, when those zebra leave the area at the end of the dry season, so when rain starts and they can go back
Mm.
to the woodland and use ephemeral, seasonal water, do the lions follow them out, then hit the village and the cattle, and then stop and
Mm.
kill cows? You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what are the interactions between these different constituent parts of this ecosystem?
yeah,
And humans and their livestock are a constituent part of this ecosystem. So it really comes down to how do you manage it for the best outcome for all the parties? And that's I guess
yeah, yeah.
really what we're trying to focus on there.
And in Karangoma, if I understand correctly, there you're partnering directly with the community.
Yes.
So they own the land and you've brought in the tourism entity, but effectively you're partnering directly with them.
Exactly. So the lease fees are going directly to this is one particular family um, that we partnered with there, but there are other camps that are partnered with other families or with the village
Mm.
trust and so on. So we're one of whatever it's called, 10 camps in
Yeah.
AG12,
Okay.
100,000 hectares. So it's
Yeah. Yeah.
not doing a little while. This, and as
Yeah.
I said, we're in the north, in an previously unutilized area. So it's yeah, again, the value prior to us being there, I guess, was that you could hunt sable illegally
Hmm.
and eat the meat. And now the benefit is that you have a lease fee, you have employment. There's all kinds of sort of economic multipliers
Yeah.
that erupt really once you have this main driver.
Yeah. And moving into an area like Karangoma where there was nothing previously there,
Yeah.
what are the challenges of going into a new place like that?
I mean, the first is your product. Again, just to talk straight commercial terms,
Yeah.
like if the wildlife is the product, so you can build a camp. If there's no wildlife, it really doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
And so it's habituating wildlife that had been hunted
Mm.
for 40 years.
Mm.
And some is easy, some wildlife is easy, like wild dogs are pretty easy.
Yeah.
They kind of just get on with it, and
Yeah. Yeah.
people are people. Elephants can be mixed, they can be aggressive or scared. Um, the main, let's call it prey species for the bushmeat trade, they're the
Mm.
hardest.
Mm.
So either they're at a very low ebb and you need them to recover, or those relic populations just will not be seen or will not be viewed.
Yeah.
So impala was a tough one.
Sure.
Giraffe was a tough one.
Wow.
Yeah, giraffe are easy to hunt on horseback. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and they produce a lot of meat. So your return on effort is high.
Of course. Yeah.
Hippos were the same. Hippo just sits
Mm.
there,
Mm.
obviously in water, so you can retrieve the carcass quite
Yeah. Yeah.
easily. But those things happen relatively quickly. I mean, nature is incredibly resilient
It
and
is. Yeah.
recovers quickly. And I mean, you see with elephants, even now, and the same with zebra. So we'll get 2,000 odd zebra come into that area over a period of about, well, they come in, let's say, in a dry year, they'll come in late April and they'll
Mm.
leave like late October, early November. And it kind of builds up and increases. They come from further and further. The ones that come in, the first week they're there, you can see how nervous they are. The next week, they're a little bit more relaxed. The resident zebra kind of calm
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
down. And by the end of the season, they're very relaxed. It's the same with the elephants. And sometimes those elephants have got to come through conflict zones,
Yeah.
so what they call landscapes of fear. So around a village where you've got cultivation, and they will be openly antagonized or chased from those
Yeah.
fields. Um, Understandably, of course. And then they
Mm.
come in and they're initially quite aggressive to any human kind of evidence of humans.
Yeah.
But very quickly they understand that the vehicle, our game viewers, are not a problem. And so they relax
Yeah.
around them.
Yeah.
Like when we were habituating chimps in Rwanda, the guys, it's interesting. So it's 6 Rwandans we employed as chimp trackers, black guys, obviously, from Rwanda. And then you put a white guy on the, and the chimps would be like, no, this is different, you know. So animals are very quick at picking up these differences. Jamada in Ethiopia, same story. Wear hats, and if you're not wearing a hat, then you're not a researcher. If you're wearing a hat, you're a researcher.
Sure.
So they pick it up quickly, and but I'd say that's let's say restoring relic populations can take some time, and people are impatient. So you're paying a lease fee and you're paying off a camp from day one, and your 100 impala haven't yet become 500 impala. But they do quickly become 500 impala, but it's you got to be very careful when you open that camp, because you can end up with bad word of mouth in your first year. So I think the honesty in terms of this is what it is, and I think people are interested in contributing to that anyway. So we spent the first year doing that without opening a camp, while we're building and whatever, and that kind of speeds it up. And you've got to do that, otherwise and look, I think whoever opens a camp within 20 k's of us in the future will have those benefits and so on. And that's really, that should hopefully extend all the way into Angola.
Perfect. Great. And any plans on the horizon? Anything new for Wild Expeditions?
I've been well and truly tamed, not just by COVID, but my colleagues. So and there's a few of us who founded this business, not just me. So it's we're being realistic about stuff. So we're not we're not dashing off to Chad at the moment. We need to consolidate in the countries we are. There's lots more to do in Madagascar. I think there's a few things to do in interesting places in Botswana, same in Zim. And then Ethiopia is in a real phase of recovery at the moment, and there's a huge amount to do there. So we've got, maybe my ambition got tamed a little bit by by COVID, but there's a lot to do, and we've got plenty to focus on in those countries.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time again. I do appreciate it. Fascinating listening to all the insights, and I know you are very data driven. You send out the data of Karangoma and the different habitats and water movements and things like that. So it's amazing to hear it all and understand that there's a lot of driving factor that goes into the areas that you guys are looking at, where you've gone into, and some of these areas it is tough. So hats off to you. Well done. And as I said, we love sending our guests your way. They always have an amazing time, and it's great to hear their contribution is going into the right places. So thank you.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you to you for the support and your guests, because honestly, every person, whether they're interested in conservation or not, does make a difference just by traveling to the right places. And you opened the door. I'm about to email you some data.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you. Cool. Chris, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Sean. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks to Chris and his incredible team in Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Madagascar. Our guests are helping contribute to those incredible places. In the next episode, I chat to a huge icon in the tourism industry, safari industry in Africa, Colin Bell.